This program is for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. The information provided in this podcast reflects the opinions and experiences of the hosts and is not medical or mental health advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare professional regarding any questions about your health or well-being. If you are experiencing a medical or mental health emergency, contact your local emergency services.
It made me believe that I wasn't very smart. And so what happened at that point in my early years in school is like a teacher would ask me a question and I would always answer, I don't know. But I wouldn't even try. And I had this one teacher, and this guy says to me, Steve, you are so smart. And I look at him like, what's wrong with you? So many of us are impacted with, if you do it right. And then they're made to believe that when they do it right, someone's going to tell them they're great. But then they go to people who were never told they were great. And those people will come in and tell you how you can improve. So what would happen if I changed that program?
Welcome to the Adjusting Your Life podcast. I'm Kennedi and I'm here with Dr. Steve. This is episode 101, The Life and Career of Dr. Stephen M. Ward.
This episode of the Adjusting Your Life podcast is brought to you by Ward Chiropractic. Dr. Steve finds what most doctors miss. And his wall adjustment technique? It can bring fast relief. Check out chiroman.com for hours, location, and to contact the clinic. That's chiroman, chiroman.com.
Dr. Steve, where does your story begin?
My story begins with my mom being pregnant with me. My parents were involved in a head-on collision, and the result of that was I was born 2.5 months prematurely. At the hospital, they placed me into an incubator for a 6-week period of time. At that point, they didn't give me much chance of living. Fortunately for me, my dad was a chiropractor, and he would lift up the lid of the incubator and adjust me several times a day.
What challenges did you face going home?
Well, when I got home, one day my dad was out in the front yard, and my great-grandmother, who was nearly blind, came out to the front yard and told my dad that I wasn't breathing. My dad said that, well, you're blind. And she said, well, he's not breathing. So my dad came in and checked me, and indeed I had stopped breathing. And so what then happened was my dad was taking me to the hospital, but back then they thought I had some infectious disease. So the local hospitals wouldn't take me. Fortunately for me, Harbor General and Torrance took me. And while at the hospital, what happened was all my veins collapsed, and so I had to go through cut downs, which allowed for intravenous feeding. And this was a really challenging time. They really didn't expect that I was going to make it, but my dad, being a chiropractor again, he was adjusting me multiple times a day. And I was able to overcome those early challenges, and I was ultimately able to come home.
So following that visit to the hospital, were there certain challenges that arose from that, you think?
I think the challenges that came from my heart stopping and my breathing problems was the speech impediments and learning disabilities that were probably one of my greatest challenges I ever had to work through on many levels. The one challenge was none of my friends had problems speaking. And so that impacted me to believe that I had problems and that I wasn't very smart. So it's interesting when we are faced with these kind of challenges, how we begin to frame our brain around it and create a scenario that says, oh, you have a big problem because of the challenges that you have come from.
So what age did they diagnose the speech impediment?
Oh, I was diagnosed very early on with speech problems. When I would speak so quickly that you couldn't understand anything I was saying. So it was early on, and which really took me many, many years. My mom would take me to speech therapy nearly every day for years. Mm-hmm. And what the speech therapist would do is they would work with other parts of my brain to mm-hmm. kind of try to strengthen it. It's interesting that I remember having such challenges with it, but I remember the therapist would subtly rub my back, mm-hmm. And I remember that most about speech therapy. It really was helpful for me on some level. And so it just became a lifelong issue for the early years of my life.
So the speech impediment, do you think that there's something that followed that was impacted as you got older?
Yes, the speech impediments made me believe that I was inadequate.
Okay.
And it made me believe that I was stupid. And so what happened back then in those early years is I wouldn't try in school because my belief was that I wasn't smart, or I wasn't, that I was stupid, not smart. And so instead of trying, I wouldn't try, and then I would have evidence to support the belief.
How long did it take you to work through the speech impediment?
It was many, many years. I kind of recall that it started clearing up around 10th grade of high school.
Oh, okay. So after the speech impediment diagnosis, were there other challenges that came following that?
Yes. I was diagnosed at age 6 with the Hong Kong flu virus.
Oh, wow.
And the Hong Kong flu caused me to lock backward in a curvature. So when I would stand up, I was really far backward in curvature. But when I would lean forward, I would fall. And my dad was like, "What's going on?" So went to the doctors, and they said, "Well, your son has the Hong Kong flu." And back then, it was a virus that a lot of people were dying from. And so what then happened, the doctors really didn't know what to do to slow down the progression. So they said, "We're going to put your son in a full body cast for 4 months." Out of the full body cast, I was sleeping like 22 hours a day, severely exhausted. And my dad was very helpless. He had a lot of his other chiropractic friends try different techniques on me to help me. Mm-hmm. He also would take me to different doctors to get any expert help I could get. But I was just so exhausted. And the biggest thing that came out of the Hong Kong flu for my father and his evolution was when he finally got me up and I was able to walk like 10 minutes a day, twice a day, he noticed that I walked with a severe limp. Mm-hmm. He would then lay me down and he would test to see if I had an anatomical short leg. What he found is I didn't have an anatomical short leg, but when I walked with a severe limp. So one day, he didn't really know why he did it. He flexed I was on my stomach. He flexed my heels to my buttocks. When he dropped my feet down, I was almost 2 inches short on the right leg. Mm-hmm. And so my dad thought, wow, this could be the missing link mm-hmm. that I've been looking for. And so he ended up putting a lift of nearly 2 inches in my right shoe. Mm-hmm. And immediately I was able to walk longer. Within like 3 weeks, I was able to attend a half day of school. Mm-hmm. And within a very short time, I had overcome this really significant virus. And so it's amazing how my dad was just a chiropractor. He was in the infancy of awareness, and that functional short leg awareness really triggered his mind to think that that was probably a big factor in why I was having the problems I was having. And so the beautiful thing is I was able to go back to school pretty rapidly, and I was able to put that virus behind me. So it was really amazing. I still have the speech impediments and the learning disabilities and all those challenges, but I didn't have those physical challenges that I was experiencing when I was 6.
So let's talk about the challenges that you had in school and how that, affected, what you thought about yourself and as you navigated, through elementary and middle school.
Well, whenever you have a problem, you look around you and you look to see in other people if they have the same problem you have. When other people don't have the problem, it really allows your brain to think that you're different in some way. And so that early challenge, the difficulty speaking, communicating, learning, it made me believe that I wasn't very smart. Mm-hmm. And so what happened at that point in my early years in school is like a teacher would ask me a question and I would always answer, I don't know. But I wouldn't even try because my brain said that I was not smart enough to know the answer. So it was a level of paralysis for me. Mm-hmm. And that impacted me so much of my early years in school. And it really also was a strength. Our challenge usually in life becomes our greatest strength. So my biggest challenge was in speaking and communicating. And now my greatest gift is in speaking and communicating.
So having those challenges in elementary school, when you were entering middle school, did they continue?
Yes, I continued to have difficulty with all my classes, unless it was PE. And I think primarily because I was pretty hyperactive. I think my teachers just didn't want me in their class again, so they would just move me to the next year. But during that time also, my parents separated, and that was a very difficult time for me. And so it was just the whole thing from elementary through middle school was very challenging. Having to deal with some stress with the family dynamic was also very difficult for me. But I also kept that same mindset that I wasn't very smart, which really allowed me to not try at all. It's amazing when you believe something and then you say, oh, okay, well, I won't even try. Why should I try if I'm not smart? And so that was pretty much my middle school. I was a really good athlete. I leaned on it. It really helped me. I can't imagine if I had those issues and I wasn't a good athlete, because I was able to get so much out of being good at basketball, baseball, football. And so it was a challenging time. There was also some good times during that process.
So in high school, how did those challenges that you'd experienced in elementary and middle school, how did those show up in your high school experience?
Well, my 10th grade year, I believe I was struggling significantly, and I ended up missing like 52 days in a row because my brother came down with cancer, American Behçet's lymphoma. And it was interesting because he had like no issues, and then over a period of like 48 hours, he had cancer throughout his body, which was really interesting because my dad had seen that my brother, based on x-ray analysis, he was in a really severe forward curvature, which is an immune compromising condition. And so my dad ended up having my brother assessed by our family medical doctor. They ran all sorts of tests, and the doctor came back to my dad and said, Dr. Ward, you need to stick with cracking backs and leave the medicine to us. And so, interesting enough, a year later or so, my brother had full-blown cancer. Mm-hmm. And my mom was consistently at the hospital. And so it allowed me to really flounder, and especially with my beliefs and my willingness not to try. I ended up missing a lot of school. And I remember my football coach saying, hey, if you have your mom come in and talk to me, I'm going to pass you. Okay. So a lot was going on in that time. I was struggling with these beliefs. Now I understand how behavior works, and that most all of us inherit inadequacy. We bond with someone who felt inadequate. People who feel inadequate usually disguise it in expectation. Mm-hmm. So, like, I would hear from my mom, if you do it, son, do it right. And then when I would give my best, I would hear, well, that's good, but you can do better. Mm-hmm. And so I was always feeling as if what I was doing was not adequate. And so that was just a real challenging time for me. And so ultimately, it culminated with me getting kicked out of high school. Mm-hmm. And they kicked me out because of many reasons. So I then, that summer that I was kicked out my junior year, my dad, he asked me to paint his clinic of all things. And he had this big, huge clinic. And I know why he was doing that. He was showing me what hard labor is like. Mm-hmm. And wow, after that summer that I painted his clinic, it took me 4 months to do it. I ended up saying, oh, there's no way I'm going to do this for a career. And so that's kind of what was going on through my junior year. A lot of challenges, a lot of family challenges, a lot of struggle with my mom and dad, struggling with my own ability to see the gifts that I was given, mm-hmm. and then choosing not to really put an effort out.
So when was there a time in high school that you had thought that you would follow in your dad's footsteps?
Well, it was interesting because I had lived with my mom all the way up to my 11th grade year, and maybe 3 or 4 weeks before the end of my junior year, that's when they kicked me out of high school, out of Milliken High School. And so I ended up moving in with my father because mm-hmm. my parents were separated. And my father was so different, mm-hmm. Than my mother was. And of course, I was right curve, so I was needing my mom's approval. And my dad was so easy. Mm-hmm. He was like, well, no matter what you do, son, I love you. And if you go to school, I love you. If you don't go to school, I love you. If you don't go to school, you can go get a job. And it was the first time in my life that I felt like I had a choice. Mm-hmm. And so I moved in with my dad, and I went to Canyon High School for my senior year. Because I had failed multiple courses my junior year, I also went to Villa Park Night School, and I had to make up all the classes mm-hmm. I failed my junior year. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting how everything kind of comes. It works out.
So was there someone in high school, like a teacher or someone that gave you some encouragement?
Yes. For the first time, I think most teachers saw my hyperactivity and my various learning disabilities as if it's just easier to move him along. My senior year, I had been reframed. I was moving into a different dynamic, and I had this one teacher, and this guy says to me, Steve, you are so smart. And I look at him like, what's wrong with you? And he said, no, really, you're really smart. I see that you've had challenges, but I give you a concept and you really get it. And that single person had such a profound impact. Also, I had a good friend of mine. I was taking algebra, and his name's Jeff Rosen, super smart kid, probably 4.0 his whole life. And he helped me, get through this algebra course, which I would have never been able to make it through. But he really helped me. So between the teacher and my good friend, I was able to start reframing my brain and start realizing that I was able to learn. And so that was such a blessing for me. But from missing so many days my junior year to missing one day my senior year, making up all the classes, I had always dreamed of being a chiropractor because not only did my dad help me to walk, but my dad also gave me a different mindset on my behavior. And so I remember telling my friends when I come back into the area where I grew up, I would tell them I'm going to be a chiropractor. And they'd laugh at me and they'd say, well, you can't even make it through high school. How in the world are you going to be a chiropractor? So, but my purpose, I believe, is to be a chiropractor. And I believe that I have been given a gift. My dad was given a gift. I've been given a similar gift. And the difference between my dad and myself is I think the early challenges in my life really helped me to be a higher empath. So I have more empathy, and which is good and bad. Sometimes too much empathy is a problem, right? And so, but I was very fortunate to make it through high school, to be able to make up all my classes, to do really well with my grades for me. And of course, my mom would say, son, I just want you to make it through high school without a prison record. That's what she said to me. Because of all the challenges I brought to her life during those formidable years. But yeah, so. So
was there like a aha moment that you had that gave you the confidence to pursue chiropractic school?
Yes, when I made it through high school and made up all those classes, it gave me evidence to support that I could do it. And then I decided I would go off to Fullerton Junior College. And I remember they would make you take a test to give clarity as to where you were.
Placement test, yeah.
Placement test. And I knew that I wasn't going to pass that test because I had messed around so much. So I ended up petitioning a College 100 course. And I had this teacher, her name was Jean Wenke. And I would come every, Wednesday night or whatever it was. And I'd hang out in the back. And she said, are you going to keep coming like every day? And I said, I'm going to keep coming until you allow me into your class. So I ended up getting a B in that class. That allowed me to get around the test. I then was able to take specifically the classes I needed for my pre-med, what the chiropractic school required. I don't think I took any additional units. I just took what I needed. And I was able to get into chiropractic college.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, it was quite the evolution in me. And I really had, it's interesting because in my senior year, my dad took a set of x-rays on me. And at that point in the 80s, he was really evolving behavioral patterns.
Right.
And so he took my x-rays, but then he said, I'm going to have someone who doesn't know you read you. And it was a female chiropractor, and she did a behavioral reading on me. And she really pointed out how I had bonded with my mom. And I had bonded with my mom's feeling of inadequacy. And that I needed to see my life through my own eyes, not the inherited eyes. So that really helped evolve me through those very challenging times. And so thankful that I made it through those times, because what I know I have been placed on this earth to do is heal people. And I feel like I heal people almost effortlessly. And I think a lot of that is because of the story and because of the challenge and how I've grown, how I see myself differently, and how I see my value, not in what I do, but in who I am, and how I've learned to build on my greatness in my life.
So it sounds like your dad was a mentor with the chiropractic. How did he help you through college when you were going through chiropractic school?
Well, when I started chiropractic school, what was interesting of that time is my dad was such a rebel. All the doctors were taking segmental films, lying down or standing up, and my dad was taking standing front and side view full spine x-rays. So the x-ray image was cranium to pelvis. And he was also looking at the spine seated from the front and side, cranium to pelvis. And so, he did wall adjustments instead of face down adjustments. He was putting people in sizable heel lifts and on seat wedges, and having them use cervical collars to get them out of fetal sleeping patterns. And so, my dad was such a brilliant man in my eyes. I see him as the greatest chiropractor ever. And in my reality. And so, but I kept my mouth shut when I went to chiropractic college. I did not tell anyone who my dad was.
Right.
Because I knew that he had people that loved him and people that hated him. And I should say he had people that loved him and people that didn't like him. And so I just didn't talk about who my dad was. I realized I just needed to kind of make it through. However, I was still sabotaging. The early issues and belief systems were still playing out, but it had changed to, how am I going to compete with this great chiropractor? How could I ever be as amazing as he was? So that was very interesting time for me. So I ended up not showing up much to chiropractic college. I would show up for the midterms and finals. I hired a note taker, which most people in our class, this one really brilliant girl, she took these amazing notes, and I would come the week of our midterms or the week of our finals. I'd get my notes. I'd go home, read the notes, and I'd go pass all the tests. So here I'm sabotaging. However, I was, from the speech problems, the learning disabilities, and the challenges, I could take a bunch of information and I could sit down and I could learn it, and I could go in and pass the test. It was a miracle. But chiropractic college was really interesting for me. And I was really blessed to meet some good people, have some really great instructors. And, but I still kind of, fooled around and didn't really take it as seriously as I would today. And because part of me was trying to sabotage. But then guess what happened next? Next was clinic. And in the clinic, wow, I could already adjust really well because I had been, learning.
Around your dad.
Yeah. And so that was my greatest time. I never missed when it came to clinic, right?
Yeah.
And so that was interesting. But a little story on my clinic time. I had 2 clinicians in the last year. I had a Dr. Plant and I had a Dr. Quick. And at that point, the word got out who my dad was. And Dr. Plant says to me, he says, I hear your dad is Dr. Lowell Ward. And I say, yes, he is. He's the smartest chiropractor I ever met in my life. I just love him. And so he says to me, he says, well, I'm not going to have you do all this other stuff. What I'm going to have you do is put on a presentation for all the clinician groups. So,
No pressure.
So I would go to the clinician, and then I would put on a presentation on spinal column stressology while I was in school. I think I ended up doing 30. And then the next term, my last trimester, was a Dr. Quick, and he was the same. He loved my dad. And so it was really an incredible time for me, because where I excelled is in healing. And I wasn't really as great in the academics.
We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's talk about your work with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. How did that start?
My dad was teaching a class to chiropractors in South Carolina, and he realized that he had also booked a presentation at the same time in Roanoke, Virginia, on chronic fatigue. So my dad said, son, you're going to Roanoke, Virginia, and you're going to speak on chronic fatigue in its relationship to like Epstein-Barr or chronic fatigue associated with degenerative disease. And I'm going to go to South Carolina and I'm going to train these chiropractors. And so that's how it began. It was just because he messed up on his schedule, and he couldn't be in two places at one time. And so I was putting on this presentation, and I was reading the room, and I looked out and I saw this lady, and I thought, wow, she's really angry with me. And so I had completed my presentation on chronic fatigue, and I walked up to her and I asked her, did I say something that offended you? Because I feel as if you're angry with me. She said, well, I'm not angry with you. I'm just angry. So I asked her, well, why are you angry? And she said, well, I was told that the only person on this planet that could help my son who has Duchenne muscular dystrophy is you. Well, I'm in my second year out of school. And I said to her, I said, well, I don't think that it's me, it's really about my dad. And so that's how it began. And it was Cheryl and Richard Dennis, and their son was Garth, who happened to be my first Duchenne muscular dystrophy case. So I went to dinner with them, and I talked to them, and I said, well, I don't know if we can help. I'll call my dad and I'll find out. And my dad didn't know because he had never worked with muscular dystrophy before. And so I asked him if I could do a free treatment program on this 5-year-old boy with Duchenne. And my dad said, well, son, I don't do free, but if you want to, take on this case for free, then you can do that. And so that's really where that process began. Is my dad said, sure, if you want to treat him for free, go ahead and do it. And so Garth came out from Florida City, Florida with his father, Richard, and they spent 2 weeks in our clinic. And at that point, he was following like 7 or 8 times a day. And by like the third day of treating this young man, he stopped falling. And of course, we took the standing and seated front and side view full spine x-rays. I did all the measurements. I gave a report of findings. We instructed him to use the seat wedge to counter the forward curve. We instructed him to use a cervical collar to shift him out of fetal sleeping patterns. And then I began treating him. And I treated him a couple times a day for a couple weeks. By like the third or fourth day, his fall stopped. And And then his strength started improving. And we actually went up to, in Palm Springs, we took the tram up to the mountains, and there was snow up there. And this young little boy with Duchenne he's climbing all over the place and walking and not falling. And so that was really the beginning of the Duchenne project. And of course, after that, when I found that I was able to help this little boy in a short period of time, I thought, well, let's take on 30 kids for free.
Oh, wow.
So I was the person who took on all the kids, and I worked on them all for free. And, it's interesting because today I still have some Duchenne kids living, and one of which is going to be in our docu-series. Mm-hmm. And he's 42 years of age. And his family was told that he was going to die by age 20. And so it's just was so amazing to me that I was able to have an impact on so many young boys' lives, because in Duchenne, women are the carriers and the boys get Duchenne. Girls don't get Duchenne. It's one of the most crippling childhood diseases. And so many of those kids die very young in life. And so I just started taking on the kids for free, working on them, and really seeing results in most of the kids. I found that the boys that their spines curved right, they were very high standard. They were more mother influenced, and those boys worked harder. When I found Duchenne boys that curve left, they have way more fear. So when we look at left, we see a logic pattern. And so often they were going into irrational logic, and that was resulting in fear and paralysis. So I would say to them, I'd say, move your finger. And they'd say, I can't. Move your toe. I can't. And so they were coming more from a victim pattern. Then I found that when the kids were backward in curve, which a lot of Duchenne boys, when they stand, go backward in curve. And the more backward they were in curve, the more those children would withdraw from their own reality. And so in those earlier days, I remember, because I had such a savior role complex, my dad had saved me and helped me walk. So my goal and purpose was to help other kids. And so my purpose was to actually save these children. And of course, we know that the work that I did on these kids did not cure the disease. However, many, many kids have lived to be 30. Some have lived to be in their mid-30s. And then I have the one kid that I've worked since like 1992. He has really gone way beyond what the outcome was supposed to be.
Right.
And so he's, now 42 years of age. And he was such a good example, because he had a very strong mom. His mom was on him to work hard. And he wanted to work hard. And this young man was so good with the other kids coming in the program, because they could see what he was doing and how he really benefited from the work and the behavior work. Because what we know in Duchenne is there's behavior just like any other disease. So if there's a disease, there's a pattern. There's going to be various patterns in it. Some are going to be more severe. Some are going to be less. So what I was able to do early on in my career is really impact a lot of lives, help them to be stronger, to stay mobile, to keep flexible. Like so many of these boys go into hip contractures. We were able to really slow down that process. So many of them will invert their foot or turn their foot in. And we were able to really help with that. But most importantly, I would make an audio recording for all these kids. And they would listen to it while they slept, and the the family would listen to it. Because what we realize in disease is that it's not a child in a disease, it's a family matter. And the healthier the family dynamic, the better for the child who was diagnosed with Duchenne. And so it was really just such a joy of my life. It was a lot of work. And I remember having a kid come from Russia, and he had some father abandonment issues, and he was 7, and the fear was so incredible, and his paralysis was so deep that I remember on Christmas Day, one Christmas, sitting with him for 3 hours to get him to move his hand. But he could play his Game Boy for hours. So it was just a fear paralysis.
Right.
Which, when you look at it, when we look at fear, we see a lot of times left curvature, and we see a lot of irrational logic. And when we have irrational logic, it sets up fear and paralysis. And if we don't move the child through that fear, they, as a rule, won't live long. So it was huge for my early career. I mean, here I am in my 2nd year, and I'm taking on one of the most difficult cases that is known to man. And when you look at it, you know, we're looking at it from a genetic perspective. You know, what's the genetic solution? But there's many things playing out on top of the genetic issue. There's patterns of behavior. There's how treatment can impact that process, and how treatment can help lengthen the life, how working with the psychology can help shift their behavior, shift them out of fear, get them into taking consistent action. And so anyway, it was just a great part of my life. And it's a part of a long part of my life. I'm not doing as much Duchenne work now. It was a lot of work. It was easier when I was younger, moving kids, picking up kids, and exercising kids and various things. But I'm really proud of what happened in that program, and seeing the results even today, that so many kids have benefited and families have really grown. And, you know, when I'm dealing with a child and a problem, I'm always dealing with the parents, because there's a parent component and there's a child component. And we can't just put all the load on the child. We need the parents to do the exercises. We need the parents to make sure they're listening to their audio, that they're following through on treatment program. So it's a dynamic where it's a family dynamic. So it was great for me. And I've grown a lot. And of course, in my career, I have studied Duchenne muscular dystrophy, Becker's muscular dystrophy, myotonic, limb-girdle, fasciculohumeral, a congenital MD. And so I really have worked with a number of different cases, but the majority of them were Duchenne. And so, but, you know, my Moises, who is 42, he was a great example. He really helped a lot of the children have a belief that they could have a life. Even though we have a disease, it doesn't mean we're not going to have don't deserve joy and happiness, and growth. And I believe my work with these kids really impacted a life. And of course, if you impact one life, it's meaningful. But if you impact many lives, it's even more meaningful. And I've impacted a lot of people's health, a lot of people with degenerative diseases over the course of my 37 years as a chiropractor.
Sounds like you gave those kids a real gift.
Yes, they gave me a gift. And they gave me the gift of, just understanding that I was put on this earth for a purpose. And my purpose with these children was to come from my own illnesses, my own struggles in disability, and really bring that awareness to these children. And I would take the picture of me in the full body cast and say, guess who this is? And they, who is that? Well, that was me.
Mm-hmm.
And I would help them to understand that even though we have challenges, it doesn't mean we don't have the right to live an amazing life.
Mm-hmm.
And the key to an amazing life is helping someone to find love for themselves and joy within their life, to help them to see that they're valuable, even if they are in a disability.
This episode of the Adjusting Your Life podcast is brought to you by Ward Chiropractic. For over 30 years, Dr. Steve Ward has been helping people get to the root cause of their pain. He's a second-generation chiropractor who looks at the whole spine, not just the sore spot. With standing and seated full spine x-rays, Dr. Steve finds what most doctors miss. And his wall adjustment technique? It can bring fast relief. Back pain, sports injuries. Check out chiroman.com for hours, location, and to contact the clinic, or stop by Ward Chiropractic Family Center today. Mention this ad, and you'll get a free recheck 2 hours after your first adjustment. That's chiroman, chiroman.com.
Welcome back. So, Dr. Steve, day one of your life started out with adversity, and you faced a lot of adversity throughout your life. At the heart of it all, what drives you in the work that you do as a chiropractor?
I'm driven by the challenging case. I also like working on the easy case.
Mm-hmm.
I love to heal people.
Mm-hmm.
And what really impacts me is seeing someone that comes in and they feel hopeless
Mm-hmm.
because they've had a problem and no one's been able to resolve it.
Mm-hmm.
And I always look at a problem that hasn't been resolved as they just haven't found the right solution yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a believer in that we all have power to heal
Mm-hmm.
when given the right tools. So often in life, we can heal issues that a lot of people think are impossible to impact.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know for me, my healing has come from my ability to really love myself,
Mm-hmm.
to be committed to that process, to realize that my journey with others is to help them to, one, learn to love themselves,
Mm-hmm.
empower them to be consistent with embedding the program. Like every day in my life, I start my day with love for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I go through love commands for my whole body.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned that when fear comes my way, to meet it with love, as opposed to taking personally what other people project.
Mm-hmm.
To realize that we're all here for a purpose. My purpose was to make it through the challenges, because I could have died
Mm-hmm.
and not made it.
Mm-hmm.
But in making it through the challenges, early life challenges, and then having core people around me that believed in me, and people that believed in me even when I didn't believe in me, really has helped me to see the power of my life and the direction that my life is going.
Mm-hmm.
And so number one, it's to help people to master love and joy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important that we operate in high vibration,
Mm-hmm.
that we're in love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, thankfulness, encouragement, that we're not jumping into fear,
Mm-hmm.
that we don't become self-critical, we don't self-reject. We learn to be kind rather than critical. We learn to see our value not in what we're doing, but in who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And for so many, they come into my office and they've had so many challenges and they think that no one's going to ever help them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come to a person that really doesn't know how to fail.
Mm-hmm.
I know how to give my best,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know how to fail. So
Mm-hmm.
when I'm faced with a challenging case, I just work the principles.
Right.
I work the processes that work,
Mm-hmm.
that have proven to work from case to case.
Mm-hmm.
And when people research me and they read reviews, you can see how many different problems I work on.
Mm-hmm.
And many things that I work on, maybe I never worked on it before.
Mm-hmm.
And they call me, well, have you worked on this disease? I'll say, well, no, but I'm certainly open to, because we have an opportunity through science to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I find with diseases, physical pain,
Mm-hmm.
mental emotional stressors, I find patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Once we identify the pattern,
Mm-hmm.
we see it when we see that same pattern in another person, they're having the same issues.
Oh, right.
Right? So it's really incredible vision that I would love to see this technology look at the various problems that people are facing,
Mm-hmm.
like autoimmune.
Mm-hmm.
When the first autoimmune case came in, it was a female, fibromyalgia,
Mm-hmm.
and she had a left curve. Then I had another fibromyalgia
Mm-hmm.
female come in, left curve. They were both firstborn females.
Interesting.
Then I had a different autoimmune case come, and she was left curve. And then it started to, resonate. I'm thinking, wow, why are all these women in autoimmune left in curvature? And what can we do? And what's a left curvature in a female? Over defense.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets into ladies that over push and overdo and allow their mental mind to dictate their physical body.
Mm-hmm.
And they rationalize why they overdo.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, no one will do it. Well, if a woman says to her family she'll handle it, the family will allow them.
Mm-hmm.
But if a woman says, I feel overwhelmed, she could get some help.
Mm-hmm.
One is a masculinity, I'll handle it. One is a feminine issue,
Mm-hmm.
right? So little things we've learned, over the years, that patterns are real.
Mm-hmm.
And we only see patterns if we study the whole unit.
Mm-hmm.
If we're only looking at a part of the body, oh, you have a neck problem, I'm only looking at the
Mm-hmm.
neck. But I can't define, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you're 5 inches forward or 5 inches backward in the neck when I only look at a segment.
Mm-hmm.
But if we look at it holistically, what are we going to learn? Right? How are we going to grow? How are we going to evolve? Are we going to evolve in our awareness, or are we going to stay stuck in a pattern
Mm-hmm.
or a program that everyone does because that's how they do it? But
Mm-hmm.
why are they doing it that way?
Mm-hmm.
If we can look at a whole person, why not look at them holistically instead of looking at them segmentally? Why not look at people in position of pain and where their pain's greatest
Mm-hmm.
instead of non-injury position?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have people that come in and they say, well, when I lay down, I feel great, but when I sit down, I am in so much pain. Well, then they go and get an MRI laying down, and then the MRI doesn't show the evidence to support the pain they're in.
Right.
So to me, I'm sitting in a great place. I'm in my 37th year, close to my 38th year, and I feel like I'm just beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm just starting. I have the passion that I had it when I first started with the Duchenne boys. I have in me today. The growth in me has evolved so much. I wouldn't even recognize that person who struggled with speech impediments,
Mm-hmm.
learning disabilities, thought that he had no brains and wasn't smart. I don't even know that person anymore.
Right.
That person has changed.
Mm-hmm.
I've realized how just changing one behavioral message
Mm-hmm.
can transform a person's life. For instance, so many of us are impacted with, if you do it right. And then they're made to believe that when they do it right, someone's going to tell them they're great.
Mm-hmm.
But then they go to people who were never told they were great. And those people will come in and tell you how you can improve. So what would happen if I change that program? If I'm a parent and you're my child, and I say, hey, I was taught that if you do it right. And what I learned is when I did it right, I was always told how I could improve.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of looking for approval from people outside of you, learn to self-prove, learn to self-validate, learn to self-encourage, learn to self-love, build on your greatness, because all of us come from greatness. But if we're negated in our whole journey, we never really feel as if what we do is adequate. And so important. Just changing one program, one message can transform our health and our life. And that is a great legacy.
I'm so excited. I can tell you're excited. And I mean, that's one of the reasons that we're doing this podcast is to get the word out and let everyone know about the work that you do. And we're going to talk about all of these things that you've touched on as far as the behavioral patterns on future episodes. So definitely tune in. And I think, in closing, what do you want our viewers, listeners to take away from this episode about who you are? What do you want them to know?
I want them to understand that who they think they are is probably a misdirection. That most of us are influenced by generations of behavior, and we think that a behavior that we inherit or learn is our behavior. And what I want people to understand is the real power is in letting go of who you're not, establishing new patterns of behavior that allow you to have a joyful, loving life, allow you to get to the end of your life and be able to see all the greatness of your life by your great intentions and your great actions.
I can feel your passion, Dr. Steve, as I am also very passionate and so thrilled that there's going to be future episodes and we're going to dive deep. And I think that's a great place to end today's episode. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
This is a broadcast of the Adjusting Your Life podcast, produced by Adjusted Life Media in 2025. All information contained in this episode and all other content provided on this channel is for informational and entertainment purposes only. This content is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you or someone you know is experiencing a medical emergency, please contact your local emergency services. Dr. Stephen M. Ward, D.C., is a board-certified doctor of chiropractic medicine, licensed in the state of California, County of Los Angeles. The Adjusting Your Life podcast is written and produced by executive producer Jamie Knapp and co-produced by Kennedi Hall and Dr. Stephen Ward as Dr. Steve. For more information or to connect with us, visit adjustingyourlifepodcast.com.